Okay, in this chapter I'm going to talk about some other important chords that I haven't gone over yet. First one is the diminished seventh chord. So if you take a look at the written page here, you see this is a C diminished seventh chord. It's a very interesting chord because it's all built on minor thirds. Now this is what's neat about this chord. There's really only three diminished chords. Right? Let me explain why. This chord, if I invert the C up here, it's the same thing as E flat diminished. If I invert the E flat, it's the same thing as G flat diminished. See that? Same thing as A diminished. Right? So this chord works for four different keys. C diminished is the same thing as E flat, G flat, A, and C. All depends on where you put the bass note. Okay? And when you put the bass note somewhere else, it changes the function of these notes. All right? So it's the same thing for the other 12 keys. If one chord here takes care of 4, well, there's only 12 keys, so 12 divided by 4 is 3, right? So all you need is those 3 diminished chords, and that takes care of all of them. Okay, so let's talk about a chord voicing here for diminished. Something that's common with diminished is when you want an available tension, you can go a whole step above any of the notes of the diminished chord. So say I'm going to do C diminished here, right? If I went a whole step above C, and that works, okay? That sounds nice, right? That sounds nice. So instead of that, I'm going up a whole step. So my chord voicing here is, oops. So the notes of the diminished chord are just that, right? C, E flat, F sharp, and A. What I'm doing is I'm taking the E flat, right? Bringing it up here, okay? I'm putting it in A flat, which is a whole step above the F sharp, right here. And I'm just doubling the C up there. So there's a nice diminished chord voicing. Now you could take this, move it up by half steps. You see what I'm doing? Oops. What am I doing here? So you see how I'm just moving it up and down by half steps? Right? That's a nice way to practice it. Right? So if I take a look at this common diminished chord progression, I have C up to C sharp diminished to D sharp diminished to E minor. Diminished chords usually either go up a half step, resolve up a half step to another chord, or resolve down a half step. So E down to E flat diminished, down to D minor, down to D flat diminished, down to C major is also a very common chord progression. This one, it happens to be going up. C major 7 up to C sharp diminished, D minor 7 up to D sharp diminished, up to E minor 7. You'll find that chord progression in a lot of different standards. So I definitely make sure that you practice that a lot and do it in other keys. Okay, moving on to the minor 7 flat 5 chord. Minor 7 flat 5 is a lot like diminished, right? Okay, except that the 7th is not double flatted. So to make a minor 7 flat 5 chord, it's simple. Just start with a minor 7 chord and then flat the 5th. Hence the name minor 7 flat 5. Some people also call this chord half diminished. I'm not going to get into whether that's right or wrong. I don't use the term half diminished. I know a lot of people don't use it, but a lot of people also do use it. That's a personal preference. I personally don't like using half diminished. I like using minor 7 flat 5. So even in that next chord symbol there where it says D circle with a line through it, that means half diminished, okay? Yes, it's easier to write. However, I think that minor 7 flat 5 is better. So there's C minor 7 flat 5. If I were to do D minor 7 flat 5, it's these notes, D, F, A flat, C. And now take a look at this voicing that I have here. Okay? So I'm putting down the root down there so you can see. So this is the flat 5 and the root, and then I have the 11th, the flatted 7th, the flatted 3rd. Okay? One way of thinking about this is that you're doing this tritone down here, or the root in the flat 5, and then you're just voicing down from the minor 3rd in fourths. Okay? Okay, so if we were to do this on C, here's a tritone, voice down from the minor third in fourths. There's C minor 7 flat 5, and here's D minor 7 flat 5. Okay, so let me show you another voicing that you can use here as well, and that is this one. All right, so notice how all I'm doing is going right on up and playing all the upper structures here, the 9 and the 11. Okay, this is a common 2-5-1 in minor. Typically 2-5-1s in minor go D minor 7 flat 5 or 2 minor 7 flat 5, and then the 5 chord is some kind of dominant chord with a flatted 9 added to it. Okay, so here's my root 7 third for G7. I have the flat 9 in there. I also threw my sharp 11 in there, right? Or flat 5, however you want to think of it. And my flatted 7th, then to C minor 11. Okay. If I were to do that D minor 7 flat 5, okay, so here's that D minor 7 flat 5. Now if I want to find that G7 flat 9 chord voicing, well, I got to think to myself, well, what note, what triad has that the flat 9 in it? Okay, well, that's the flat 9. Well, look, if I voice down from there, oh, it's the triad that's built on the flat 5. Okay, so there's D minor 7 flat 5, right? And I'm going to go down to G7 with a flat 9, and then I'm going to go to that C minor 11 chord voicing. Okay. Okay, now at the bottom of the page you have major 7 sharp 5. Pretty simple chord. It's a major 7 chord that's augmented. Augmented means that you're raising something. In this case, you're augmenting the 5th, all right? So sharping the 5th. Okay. Most of the time when you talk about augmented in the chord, they're referring to the 5th. So you wouldn't call a sharp 9 an augmented 9th. All right, you call that sharp 9. If you see augmented, it means sharping the 5th. So there's a nice chord, major 7 sharp 5, simple, root 3 7 down here, and then this is just a major triad built on the 3rd. Another one here is C minor major 7. All right, this is the triad built on the 5th. Okay, and then this is the root, flat 3rd, and the 6th here. Now this is usually like that soap opera chord, you know, like, what's going to happen next week? Find out, you know. It is a lot of tension, that minor major 7 chord sound. All right, so it's an interesting chord to end on as well. You know, has a very interesting sound to it. So play around with these different chord voicings, really start to understand minor 7 flat 5s, diminished, you know, the augmented, or major 7 sharp 5s, and then also that minor major 7th chord voicing. One thing I want to leave you with is, anytime you come across a chord that you don't know how to voice, just break the chord up. Okay, so break it up between the two hands and open up that sound, and it will sound really nice if you do that. Let me demonstrate. Let's say we want to do just basic C7 augmented. So this is C augmented 7, C sharp 5, flatted 7th. And it's kind of just a basic block chord sound, right? But now what if I did this? Take out the guts and bring it up here. See how that opens it up? And if you're mixing that along with, you know, along with your other, you know, chords that you have real nice chord voicings for, then it's not gonna sound too blocky. You shouldn't think that, oh, I could never play a C minor 7 like this, or I could never play a C dominant 7th chord like this. Sure you can, all right? It's just you use these other techniques to add some of that hot sauce, you know, some of that spice to your chord voicings, and you don't want to use it all of the time. You know, sometimes you use the upper structure triad, sometimes you use the 4th voicings, sometimes you might just use plain old, you know, root 7, 3rd, and 13. Something very open sounding. Okay, so make sure you go through those other chords and try doing them in other keys as well. All right, take care.